Hi, this is Stacia, and I'm going to share a game that I played in the Tuesday Tussle. So this is a USCF rated tournament game, and I faced Lewis Berry, which, although the Lee Chess rating says 1683, he's really more like in the 1500s, and my USCF rating is like 1680 right now. So, okay, let's have a look at this game. And I'm going to do something a little unusual. I'm going to fly through um, the first part of the game because the main key moments happen way later. So I will tell you what happened though. So I opened with knight f6 on move 1, which breaks my repertoire, but I was actually hoping for a Benko Gambit this game. And I did get that. So b5. And now he declined the Gambit with f3, a very strange move. And now I played one of my home cooked moves, queen a5 check. The point is after bishop d7, I go b4. This can actually be very tricky. Okay, e4, I have to stop e5, so that move. Bishop out. Now I should develop my king side, so g6. His knight comes out, bishop to g7, and already I have a threat because if I move my knight, I can take on b2, and the rook is also hit. Never sure if you want, like, you don't do this automatically because if the queen recaptures and he keeps his dark square bishop, you can end up really killed on the dark squares, so you have to be careful about taking that rook, but sometimes it's good too. So he castled, I guess not seeing my threat. So I actually took the d pawn. I expected him to take the knight, but he did not. He moved his queen. So knight back to f6. So I managed to snatch a pawn in the opening, a center pawn too. And the nice thing about this is now it helps my development with the move knight c6 now being available. So he decided he wanted to at least get my dark square bishop. Fair enough. Can't really stop him. The knight came out. Look at this beautiful knight. He could come here at some point, and he's guarding this pawn. Okay, a3. So I move my queen because otherwise there's discoveries. Takes, and I took with the knight. Queen out. So I noticed he's pinning my knight, so it's usually a good idea to get out of these pins. So king g8. And bishop back, so he wanted to save his bishop. Okay, a5, f4. f4 seems really weakening to the e-pawn, but maybe f5 is on the menu. So I do kind of like this idea by him. Okay, bishop out. I have ideas of queen c6, creating battery. Okay, and the computer actually calls this move a mistake. I think I'll take a moment to talk about this move. The reason is that we're allowing white to capture here, and in this remaining pawn structure, white has the move f5, and this takes away a little bit of the black advantage and gives white an initiative. So we shouldn't allow that pawn break, and we can stop it by instead taking this pawn. And when white takes back, there's no f5 anymore. And then we can even move the knight to g4. So this is the way the computer wants to play it. And surprisingly, you know, the knight's kind of good there. We have an immediate threat, and yeah, we still have queen c6 ideas. It's pretty interesting. So I missed that during the game. I played knight d7, which the computer doesn't like, but so my opponent did do this. But instead of f5, he played bishop e4, and then the computer doesn't like that move. Okay, so here I played d5. I mean, I have this backwards pawn, so I want to get rid of that. So d5. And now some trades occur. And queen h3. So I started getting a little nervous here because he does have some knights that can quickly come to the king side. And I was especially worried about this plan, like knight g5 and putting pressure on the h-pawn. So I actually went knight f6, attacking the bishop and defending my bishop again. He took, I took back. I love these knights. There's no pawns that can kick them away, and they're guarding each other, so they're very stable. And especially the D knight is right in the center of the board. So that is pretty nice. But my king's a little bit lonely. Okay, so the knight here. So I think the idea is knight g5 and queen here. So I had to calculate this a little, f5. The knight did jump in, but now my queen is defending along the 7th rank, and I also have other options like rook a7 and even knight f6. So I thought this was pretty good defense. Computer agrees, so once in a while I play good chess. All right, and now a practical decision, queen e7. Yes, I'm attacking this knight, I'm attacking this knight, and I'm also threatening my real threat, I think, is queen e3 check, because I'm up material and I could trade the queens off, simplify the position. I thought this must be good for me. So I did it. Queen takes, knight takes. Okay, and I think we can dive deeper from here. So I'm going to tell you that in this part of the game, okay, black has a minus 2.7 advantage. And if we look, okay, so I was pretty happy. I'm like, hey, I'm pretty much winning here. Or not winning, but I'm definitely better, and I definitely have winning chances. So nothing to be unhappy about. Maybe the only thing is that, of course, I was down on the clock. So I'm pretty sure it was something like I had 4 minutes and he had like 24 minutes. So the white rooks are a little bit more active than the black rooks. This rook is really not active at all yet. This knight is quite good, I think, on this square. And I mean, it's kind of messy, right? Because I've got these two pawns, but they're both isolated. He has an isolated pawn as well. We both have 3 kingside pawns, and the kings are still not involved. So yeah, I don't know. I felt like this is part of the game where I usually hop my knights around and win stuff. So if I could do that, like fork the rooks, win a pawn, stuff like that is what I'm playing for here. So I guess you call that activity. And white's going to try to win my pawn, because if they win that, then it's equal material. So probably my advantage goes away. So he's attacking my pawn. I played the move knight to d3. To me, this is a very pretty move. I'm attacking the rook, I'm attacking the pawn, and I'm defending my pawn. Now, I saw the move rook c3, but I wasn't worried about it because I play c4. Now, it turns out that knight to d3 is one of the mistakes in the game. And I definitely didn't understand that at first, but I have looked at it. So I'm going to share what I've learned, or what I suspect. So the correct move here is actually c4. And the reason is we're defending the pawn. And, well, that's pretty much it. We're defending the pawn, and we can even like have a more stable position with rook f to e8 defending the knight. And this knight is still free to go do stuff. So the problem with knight d3, even though I saw this, is that rook c3, even though I can meet it with c4, white seizes the initiative here. That is what I came up with. Because, you know, if we compare, well, he kind of sees the initiative already. But after this, what does white do now? It says, well, knight to d4. That's what the computer wants. So I think the knight's coming to the king side to cause trouble. Or maybe they're going to wait for this knight to move and attack my pawn. But this would give me time to do something. Wow, it says rook a b8. I really don't know how to play these positions. Rook a b8, really? Okay, and if he takes the pawn, now knight d3, because we're going to win it back. And I guess the main point is we're going to keep this pawn. So even if he goes here, well, I was thinking we take, right? Wrong. Computer says this is a draw. So I lost my advantage again. After knight d to e6. Knight d to e6. Oh. So white's going to get counterplay against my king. And it's going to be a draw. Wow. Yeah, I'm seeing a line where I even get to queen. But it doesn't... What? Okay, we have to look at this really quick. Okay, c3. If c3, sacrificing the rook. We don't even take back. We play c2. Rook a1 to stop me from queening. Now I can play knight to d3. Wow. White does that. Wow. My king has made new friends. Except they're not very friendly. Yeah, and then look at this. We actually... It says rook. Rook check. Takes. Wow, what is the material count here? So... I sacrifice my rook, but then I get his rook through a promotion, and we're left with this position where I'm down a pawn. So, okay, and I guess that's a draw. Complicated stuff, but that's why we're looking at this. I really want to learn from this game because I basically lost my advantage, then got in bad time pressure, and lost the ending. But this is the part where I lost my advantage, and yeah, so b3. I actually didn't see this move right away, only after I played knight d3. Although the computer still gives me an advantage after knight to b4. Knight to b4. Yeah, that's a tricky move, you know, so these are moves that are not easy to find, okay? I defended my knight and got my rook active. That's totally natural. You know, it basically unpins this knight, but the computer says, oh, let's not activate our rook. Let's play knight b4 and play for a trick. And fork, and... Well, I don't know if I like this because there is knight takes h7. And if I take the knight, check. Now I have to move my king. And now this rook can move away. I guess the only nice thing is I get to play this, but then he takes it. I feel like I'm worse, but I'm not worse. No, it's equal material. Equal material, I have an outside passer. I mean, black has winning chances here, but this is not an advantage. Computer says 0-0, so. So even if I saw that whole line, I wouldn't go for it. And I think I did see the fork at least, but I stopped there. I was like, I don't want to give up my knight. I want to get my rook active. So this move. But now white can take. Yeah, my opponent actually messed up. He could take on c4 now, and I thought he would. Like, why not take this pawn? It's definitely good for white. That pawn's the main source of my advantage. So he should take that. Let's see. Well, I was planning this move. Yeah, and I mean, I don't know how to evaluate this. To me, it's about even. Computer says black's a little bit better. Probably because we have an outside passer, but I feel like white can win this pawn. Like, block it with one rook, attack it with the other. So, yeah, it's a game of chess, and I have to prove that I can do something with this pawn, or at least distract his pieces with it. So, very interesting stuff, right? So, c4, pawn there, here. Now, he didn't take the pawn. He should have took it and gone into that, but he didn't take it. So now it says black has an advantage again, minus 1.9. Still, that is a good advantage. So those mistakes that I played earlier are renewed. They're wiped away clean, and I have my advantage back. So I have to find the right moves here. So let's think about what we should do. I can definitely take the F pawn, that's one thing. And if I do that, what's the downside? I think I would definitely do that. Okay, I did in the game. All right. Yeah, there's nothing better than that. So, all right, he then took my pawn, but at least I got a pawn on the king side for it. So I think that's okay. And I actually could take this pawn. I was definitely thinking about it. Instead, I played h3, h6. I had an idea here. What was it? Oh, I wanted to play rook e4. Yeah, I wanted to play rook e4. That would attack the knight and x-ray the pawn. So I did this. The computer actually does kind of like it, but another way I could have played is rook a to d8. Yeah, so I have to start learning to play chess like this, where you undefend something, but you threaten something else. So he's going to have to move his knight. So it says, oh, knight g to f3 defends it. Then I have an advantage after g5. g5, the knight is overworked. He cannot take the pawn. He's overworked and underpaid. So king f2. But then can't I go g4? I guess not, because my knight's now attacked by the king. So I'm going to take that g pawn. And now he can take the f pawn. This is really messy. I mean, black has a -1 advantage, it says. Am I up exactly one pawn? I guess I am. But this is a crazy game. See, like, it would not be clear to me that going into this with all these complications is good for me. I would have no idea. It just looks chaotic. You know, computer's like, oh, it's -1. Okay. In a real game, that just looks chaotic. You're just like, well, I'd have to outplay my opponent from there and hope that it's not losing for me already. Okay. So in the game, I played this way. This is probably a little safer, and it's totally fine. And he decided to go for my a pawn. So I can win his pawn. And I liked this move because now my knight guards the pawn. So he goes here. And then guess what? After knight to e5, my advantage is once again gone. I have a slight advantage now, minus 0.4. I have to play the move knight to e3. It's the only move that keeps the advantage, but it makes sense because we basically have to move our knight. And the computer's saying, you have to come back and hit the g-pawn. More active here. Maybe we'll go to c2. Maybe we'll take the g-pawn. I don't know. So I have to wonder if he tries to save his g-pawn like this. Computer says we do go knight h3 check. King h1, wow. I mean, I could throw this then. And again, knight d3 loses the advantage. I have to play knight h3 check, and after king h1, g5. Yeah, I typically don't play like this, pushing my kingside pawns like this. So I have a lot to learn. But apparently this is pretty stable. It's just amazing to me. I guess we're going to go g4. Actually, I don't see it in the line. Oh, I do see it. It comes later. Wow. Okay. Well, that's how that should have gone. So instead, I went to e5, which allows for a trade. And maybe that's the problem. You know, now it looks clear to me now, actually. So I'm going to lose this pawn, and I'm offering trades. So that's going to go down into a more drawn position. But I reasoned that I'm still up a pawn. So I have chances. I'm up a pawn, I mean. But this is not the advantage I had earlier. So yeah, this happened. I also felt my rook and knight can cause a lot of problems for white. You know, I am threatening this. So he checked me. Of course, I was like under a minute. And he had tons of time, and I think he found some good moves like this one. So knight to h4. Notice I know my pawn's under attack, but I can't push it ever because he could take. And it's hard to keep defending because g3 is going to happen. Yeah, computer wants to play rook e1 check, knight d3 check, and keep checking. Let's look at that really quick. So king f2, knight d3, guarding the rook and checking at the same time. The king has to go up. And then we go knight e5 check. And the king could go back. And it wants rook c1 now. Wow. So that was a nice little maneuver. That's what that was. We maneuvered the knight off the unstable square because of g3, and we put it here where it guards the pawn. Wow. What a cool idea. Wow. So in this position, I have to see that my knight belongs on e5, and then you can do that little sequence and get the knight there. Wow. Yeah, so learning a lot. Okay, there. Now this way I'm going to lose my pawn, right? So I checked here. I'll just show what happened. I think I'm losing that pawn no matter what. I have to find that plan of putting the knight on e5, e4. Yeah, I blocked, but I don't know. I could go king g5. It just looks so scary, right? Because then he's going to take. I mean, this does not look good to me. King h5 only move. Computer says this is a draw. Yeah, no thank you. I'm not going into that, so I blocked with the rook. I guess I could also just move my king up, but I felt like then I might lose this pawn, so I blocked and did this, and he did take. So I lost my advantage. All right, so here I knew I lost my advantage. But we have knights, and maybe there will be some fork or some way to continue and make progress here. It's also unfortunate that my pawns are isolated and his aren't. So I actually think with my king being active, maybe it's equal, but if his king gets active, I actually think white will have a slight advantage. Yeah, I don't know about this move. I didn't know what to do. I don't think I should trade pawns, but I think maybe I was already going for a draw here. Oh, wow, and that's just a horrible move, f4. Computer says it's fine. But after king g2, I'm going to lose a pawn, right? So, yeah, I don't like that. It says here, play f takes g3. This is why the computer likes it. And if he takes my knight, then I get to take here and take. And now white doesn't have sufficient material to win. So this is just a forced draw. That's what that is. Instead, I went knight g5, keeping it alive, but losing a pawn. So very suspicious. Yeah, now I'm just hopping my knight around, and there's a critical moment very soon. He's making progress on the other hand. He wants to come in and win my pawn. Yeah, my king's forced back to defend the pawn. I didn't think this is a good move, but maybe it is. Wow, it says knight f5 is a move. Okay, let's look at this, because this is where I need to calculate a little bit better. I thought if he takes, I stop my calculation, because I'm like, oh, I'm losing. But guess what? I'm not losing. It's a draw. Okay, if he moves his king to the side, I have this move, winning the pawn. So he's got to push the pawn, but guess what? I get this. Again, if he goes here, I go here. So he has to bring his king, or he has to move his pawn pretty much. Yeah, and if he has to move his pawn, I get this. Now I have the opposition, and the king is locked on the h-file, and he'll never get him out. So like here, let's just make sure. Yeah, if he goes, if he just moves his king, I'll just keep the opposition. So he has to go here, and then I can still, let's see, king f8. If he moves his king out, I get king g8, and then I get in the corner. So king f8. This is the only move I get here. Yeah, and now it's a draw because my king will get to the h8 square. Wow. Well, that's a long calculation to get done quickly, but that's probably why I need to get better at calculating stuff like that. Because I think knight f5 is desirable then. It will force the draw because the knight is hanging. So I like knight f5. Actually, the knight would hop away, wouldn't it? Let's see, knight c2. Yeah, and we play on from here. All right, so in the game, though, white made progress, f5, and now I make a bad mistake soon. I had seconds left, when I played knight to c5 check, and this loses the game. I kid you not, it loses the game because white is trying to get their king up into my position, and once they do that, like, they'll escort their pawn. And knight to c5 allows the king to come up with tempo. Knight to d5, and now my knight has to move. Actually, he played here in the game, but that's also fine. And I have to play king f7 here, which I didn't. So this is even worse, because now look at this king. Yeah, now he wants to trade because it's winning. But it says plus 64 here for white. So this move loses the game. So instead, I have to play knight f2 check. It's the only move. I have to save my knight, but not help the king. And now if the king tries to come up, I go king f7, and I still keep him out barely. I mean, don't get me wrong. White is pressing here. I'm worse, but there's chances to hold a draw still. Knight c5 check, on the other hand, loses on the spot. So I would call that move a blunder. All right, so I'll show how it ended. I tell my kids never resign, so I really try to hold on for a while here. But I think here it's time to resign. So I did do that. I could have played for stalemate actually, but I don't know. With all this material, yeah, I don't think I should play on. So all right, so painful game for me, but definitely one to learn from. Kudos to my opponent, who I know he's lower rated, but I think he played very well, especially the late part of the game. Early part of the game, not so much, but the late part of the game, he seemed to play almost perfect. And I find this game really instructive because those mistakes that I made, a lot of them are like, you need to like calculate and have strategy at the same time. And so I think like it was hard to see some of those continuations. So I think I might look at this game some more. But I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll be back with more chess. All right, thank you and bye.